Hey, how's everyone doing? Welcome to the second episode of the Nobody Podcast. I'm your main nobody, John Kellogg. Hope you're all doing well. As you can tell, I sound a little different. Maybe I have a cold. My nephews gave me a nice little cold over the weekend, so I will try not to do any disgusting shit in front of the microphone. And if I do, I will edit it out. So, hope everyone's doing great. It's been a weird holiday weekend over the Thanksgiving weekend. Um, like first of all, having the whole day for football is great. But I had at least enough sense in the morning to skip the Lions and Bears game. I put it on. I was just like, oh, who's playing this morning? I knew which three games were on. I didn't know when they were on. And when I noticed that it was the Bears Lions, I was like, oh my God. And so instead, I worked out, took the dog on a walk, got stuff done. It was a nice day. So I do apologize for the sniffles and all that. Anyway, all I just say, I'm going to apologize for that stuff ahead of time, um, because it's probably going to be kind of second nature. I'm not going to realize it sometimes. But so I'm going to try not to be a pig, a gross, fucking, disgusting pig today. But no promises, no guarantees. Something that I've been kind of like tripping out on is the very prominent divide and conquer thing going on in our culture. It's really literally what I see politically is you have both sides, right and left, blue and red team, whatever the fuck you want to call them. Both parties. Like, so I'm just going to lay the groundwork now. Politically, I don't care that much. I think both parties are roughly the same. They're both just right of center. The Democrats are corporate neolibs. The Republicans are corporate neocons. So the neo for lib and con, really what that means is corporate. I think that's what, when you say new liberal or new conservative, what that means is it's entirely corporate, which I don't know how new that is for the Republican Party, but it's certainly within the last 30 years for the Democrats to do that. Personally, I'm left leaning. I'm left of center on most stuff. I'm right of center on some stuff. Kind of like an old school constitutionalist in a way. I really feel like, for instance, the First Amendment means you don't get to fucking edit anything. That's censorship is ridiculous. That's the freedom of speech. It's, I believe, in the unabridged freedom of speech as it was written in the First Amendment. And to carry on the Second Amendment, I totally support, open carry. I don't have an issue with any of that stuff. I feel that people would be more respectful and better off if we had a more open Second Amendment firearms policy. I live in California. It's a very closed state. Other places, you're like, what are you talking about? Open. It's wide open here. Well, unfortunately, I don't live in your states. But just nationally, I think that the right to self-defense is, first of all, the reason why it's most important is against your government. And second of all, it's because in this country, we have individual rights and liberties that take precedent over everything else. And so that the individual deserves a very high, to some people, it would almost seem insane to have that level of, but I really believe that that's what we have. So anyway, I'm not going to go into my fucking beliefs, but when I mean politically, I don't agree with either party. I would like to see third, fourth, and fifth party rise to the top, and so that power can be distributed more evenly across the political spectrum, and therefore run down to the average everyday person. Like, I personally don't understand why we even have a congressman. I understand when we were writing by fucking feathers and ink and delivering mail by horse. I understand why you need a congressman to represent all those people. But now that we do all of our banking online, we shop online. The American dollar is America's greatest weapon. And so it is so well protected online. And there's a systems in place to recover money, to investigate issues, right? All that. That whole infrastructure is already in place for voting. For banking. I see no reason why it can't be there for banking. For voting. Jesus Christ, man, I'm fucked up today. Anyway, so politically, I am for some what maybe are considered radical changes, not violently. Um, Things like voting. I don't. We shouldn't have congressmen and women. The bill should be put forth to the people as it is. There should be a word limit on it. That way, it's not full of convoluted horseshit. They shouldn't be attaching writers to bills or things that are unassociated with the topic. I think each bill is a standalone topic, unless it has to incorporate other things, like if it's regulatory or something. But anyway, that's where I am politically. Just as sort of a gauge for yourself. So when I'm talking about something, you kind of understand what perspectives I might be approaching it from. But this divide and conquer, I see the reason why I bring up the American dollar is it's our weapon, and so I see it being deployed now domestically. When I was a kid, it was deployed internationally against the Soviets, and it ultimately did bring down the Soviet Union. So what I find interesting is that when America faces an opponent who is at the very least of equal might, we are absolutely nonviolent. We go right into we are just going to use our economic advantage, our free markets, our favorable business climate to squeeze out any competition internationally as far as state power goes. So what I find disturbing though is that I see that they've moved that from the Soviet Russians in the 80s and early 90s. Actually, I think it was pretty much over by the 90s. But so as a kid throughout the 80s, I didn't pay much attention to it. But when I go back in history and I kind of learned about it, I was sort of able, because I was sort of in that culture. So I had a feel for it. But as a young kid, I was sort of out of it. I was born in 80. So, by the time the Berlin Wall fell, I was probably like 8 or 9 years old. I was still geeking out on Dodgers, Lakers, and championships and a USC Rose Bowl victory. So I was still geeking out on kid shit. Nintendo, I think that was like one of the first years I got Nintendo. So anyway, all that to be said, that I just find it weird. It's disturbing to see that this same practice of using the dollar to wage war is now being done so against us in the middle class and in the lower class. And even to some extent, the upper middle class or the verge middle class, like even them, they're getting pushed out to where only those in the upper middle class, will have any sort of, will have an advantage, and everyone else will be disadvantaged by the system or is being disadvantaged. And when I say they're waging war on us with the dollar, what I just simply mean is the way money works is that it grows. The more you have of it, the faster it grows. I noticed this when I was investing with just $1,000. And I know that now that I'm investing it with several $1,000s, I see it more. I see it took me much longer to go from like $1,000 to $2,500. And it took me considerably less time to go from $2,500 to $5,000. And it's taken me even less time to go from 5 to 10. And so it's when like me, I've been investing for long enough to watch my returns grow and to see the actual nature of compounding returns and how it gets momentum, the more and more momentum as it increases in size, which it's exactly like a wave in the ocean. The bigger the wave goes, the faster it's moving. That's just how it is. And so I see this with inflation. And what I see is I see this wave that is pulling under most of us. And we are getting sucked up into this because the nature of money is to compound. So if you don't have multiple revenue streams, or at least a minimum of two decent ones. Or like in the case of if you invest in stock equities, you have equity in something, and so you can borrow against it if you need cash. You can sell those equities and hold a cash position, so you have another cash flow, let's say, potentially. So anyway, what's happening is they're just creating a standard of living that, in order to have a good quality middle class standard of living that maybe our parents and forefathers enjoyed, that standard of living will be above our head. Let's say, right, that in 15 years, the middle class standard of living is $150,000. That if you don't have that much money, you're pretty much living hand to mouth. Now, in that inflationary environment, right, there's going to be a lot of people below the poverty line, a lot of people, and there can be far less. And so what you do is you see people squeezed out. You see them sort of falling apart. And this is what you saw with the Soviets at the end of the 80s, is they got squeezed out. They had carried too much debt. They couldn't do things, and eventually the government toppled. Now, in the case that we're talking about against your own citizens, when you wage domestic war on them, these people kill themselves. They become drug addicts. They essentially fall off what I guess is a bad way to say, the productive side of society. But they no longer become engaged capitalists. And so they're sort of kicked out. They have no place in the country. And what this does along the way is it encouraging this divide between classes, because this is a classism war here going on in the country. I think it's being disguised as, and under the guise of, this is a race issue, and that is because America has a long unaddressed issue of race problems. The one thing I really disliked about the Obama years was that the whole time we kept saying he's a black guy, he's a black guy, he's a black guy. The reality is that he's a half black guy. And what bothers me is that we gave ourselves full credit for integrating a black guy for really actually only going halfway. It's that whole it's the participation trophy generation's way of expressing that same thing that we taught these people into the elections, because we gave ourselves full credit for really not electing a black guy. Now, it's definitely a step in the right way. And like me, I voted for him. I fell for the whole change thing. And so it was a step in the right direction. We were doing the right thing. I personally just would have liked us to be more honest and more genuine with ourselves and said, hey, look, we went halfway. We got a ways to go. When we elect a black guy, a full-on, no questions asked black guy, then I think we deserve to give ourselves a pat on the back and say, hey, maybe we're making moves in the right direction. But we took a baby step forward, and we gave ourselves credit for crossing the line. And I personally just feel like we're still not at that place where we can realize that we really have race issues, because we're sort of hiding behind the fact that we're sort of half hiding behind it. Let's just say that. So I see this, right, this sort of a wages dollar war, which is guised under the guise of a race war. It's racial justice, when really it's just another tactic of divide and conquer. Now they're using the dollar, and they're using our culture against us, because we haven't resolved these racist issues. America does have a bias problem. It certainly is biased against people of dark skin. It's not as biased as the people who, let's say, on the BLM and critical race theory, CRT movement, it's not that bad. And it's certainly not as good as I made the mistake in the last few years of thinking it's better than it really is. It's sort of like the whole Obama thing. Like, well, he's a black guy and we're good enough. when I've been like, it's not that bad. Because the reality is I live in LA, there's a lot of cultural mingling. I mean, there's everyone. You just can't look at any Latino and just assume he's Mexican. I mean, there's like probably a 60, 70% chance, right? So the odds are in your favor. But there's also a really good chance that you're going to be fucking calling a Costa Rican a Mexican, right? Or a Salvadorian. But just for those of you, just to help you out, growing up in LA, I can give you a hint. Um, Short Mexicans are actually Salvadorians. So that's what I've done in myself. I was like, he looks a little Mexican, but he's like 5 foot nothing. Probably Salvadorian, just so you know. So just to give you guys, when you're generalizing and stereotyping out there on your own, that's a little hint to help you with your to be accurately, to try to be more accurate stereotyper. But I'm just fucking around, just joking. So the but this divide and conquer used with race, um, what I find really interesting about it is that people who are hardcore on this critical race theory thing, I'm going to tell you out front, I don't have a ton of knowledge about it, mostly because I think it's total horseshit. It's stupid uh, victimization. I'm not saying it's horseshit in that there's no truth in it. There is truth in it for sure. But the way it's going about is I'm a victim and I'm a hapless victim of my cultural ethno race thing, whatever you want to call them. That's just the stupidest fucking bullshit I've ever heard. Especially in a country that it's not a complete meritocracy, but there is a lot of meritocracy here. So I think people who believe that, I just think that they just believe stupid shit. It's like the Scientology of culturalism. But anyway, what I've noticed is that what critical race theory sort of espouses, or I don't know, man. It whatever it says is that because, right, whoever is speaking is I'm a minority and I am of a lower social ethno class than white people, because there's this system here that is designed to keep us divided, to keep us segregated, as far as create a class system, right? And so that these people are sort of acknowledging that they are, because of their color or their skin and their race, that they are um, of a lower social class system, which I'm not going to argue against in theory. Like, there are areas where you are treated as lesser citizens than white people. What I find interesting is that there is another group who also believes, right, that minorities are second rate citizens. And look, I'm going to interrupt here again. I don't say people of color because I think it is disingenuous to say people of color. It is the same as saying colored people. I grew up with my great grandparents were from the segregated South. They grew up in segregated Arkansas. And they, despite being sweet people, they had issues with race, in which that they would say overtly racist things, or hold or say things with a undertone of racism. Things such as, look at them carrying on, or that's why those folks don't get ahead. It's stuff like it's that tongue-in-cheek racism. So I grew up in that. And because I lived with my great grandparents, my parents did, and we lived on their property until I was in like second grade or something, first grade. But anyway, the point of me saying this is my great grandparents said racist stuff, and they held biased beliefs. And my exposure to this, I was exposed to this. It was something that at some point I had to sort of overcome and say, okay, look, the influence of your family is not correct. These are the bias of people that you love, but this is not the truth. Because when you're little, you grow up thinking that these things might be true because these are, These are the people you look up to. Great grandma gives me fucking Fig Newtons. She feeds me damn good Southern style cooking breakfast, biscuits and gravy from scratch. I mean, how do you argue with someone like that? Um, so I will never say people of color, because to me, it's when I was young, my great grandparents took me down the streets of racism, right? They would use these words and they would use them in context. And so you can change, right? You can, at some point, the media, it seemed like we were on Black Highway. And then some point the media took us off, and now we were on non-white boulevard. And then they kind of took us down again, and now we're on people of color avenue. Now, you can tell me, because of the sign, the street sign may say people of color avenue, but this is colored people road. Or colored people avenue. I have been down this before with my great grandparents. I know you may call it a different name. You may rearrange the words to be all cute and original. But the reality is that people of color avenue and colored people avenue, they're the same fucking street. And I know where this goes. If we allow this to continue in our language, in our culture, and we try to use it, quote, compassionately, I know where this goes. My great grandparents, it goes from people of color avenue, and then it goes to porch monkey lane. That's the reality of it. And right around the corner, once you start going down these avenues where you start using these terms this way, right? It's like the nature of money. It makes it easier to go to the next one. So if we get down, we're here on Colored People Avenue or People of Color Avenue, whatever you want to say, right around, just right up ahead, the next street, the next thing that's going to start happening is Porch Monkey Lane. And right around the corner from that is Nigger Avenue. We cannot keep going down this path. I'm not saying by saying black and being on Black Highway was the way to go, but it's better than what we're on now. Because I know where this goes. And people, we don't want to say this, but when you make this type of borderline racist language every day, you also make other borderline racist language, or not even borderline, more obviously racist language. Now you make it possibly more acceptable. And in this divide and conquer culture we're in, I think it is a terrible thing that we are saying people of color. I will never say that shit, because I would never say colored people. So I am going to say, I don't know what else to say except to say people, because everything else sounds racist to me. If I say non-white, it sort of creates this, well, that's fucked up. That's like implying there's a caste there. And then I'm fucking falling into this critical race theory shit, right? And again, with the people, my point of, before I digressed off my streets of racism analogy, is that the critical race theory shares this belief that you are second class citizens to white people with another group called the KKK. Now, I'm not saying that that's not how it happens in the real world. There are certainly instances where your race, you are treated like a second class citizen. I'm not going to pretend like that's not the reality of America. But what I wonder is, how are you for the critical race people? How are you making anything better? How are you solving anything? How is jack shit getting done if you agree with the people who are marginalizing you? Like, you're basically saying, I agree with the KKK. We're second-rate citizens, whatever. This has got to stop. The only difference between you and them is that they're white and they don't want it to stop. But as far as you guys have diagnosed the same problem and you seemingly have accepted it as, we're second-class citizens because we're black or brown or whatever, and so it sucks. So we're just going to get fucked. And I mean, I'm not saying you're wrong, but I'm saying, where's your solution in all this? How do you make this better? If you are so similar to your oppressors who want to do this to you, like, what I would ask those who believe in this is, where is the line between between critical race theory and helping the KKK. To me, it's a very blurred line. Like, you don't know when you're stepping over that line. You don't know when you're helping spread a poisonous KKK mentality versus drawing awareness to the fact that there are in some instances, black people and other minorities are second-class citizens. That's true. But where's the line? And when you agree with these type of fucking people, like the KKK of all people, right? Like, at what point are you doing yourself a service and them a disservice, or vice versa? When is it a disservice to you and a service to them? Like, for me, maybe because I don't know it that well, I don't know where the line is. It's not a clear line in the sand. And I think that's a fucking problem. I think the way to solve it, I'm not going to give you guys diagnose you the problem. I think the way to solve it is to do what I kind of adopted as the Morgan Freeman solution. The actor thinks we should just stop referring to people as race. I actually think it's a good idea. I think the only time race should come up is if you need to be identified in some way as not even necessarily on your driver's license, but I don't think it's a bad place to be. But we just need to stop talking about race. I'm not going to call you my black friend Brian, and my black friend Brian isn't going to call me my white friend John, unless it's for the term of you're telling a story. Brian and I were going this, we did this happened, and someone's like, wait, Brian? White Brian or black Brian? Oh, yeah, black Brian. Like, oh, yeah, okay, because that doesn't sound like something black Brian would do. That kind of thing I get. That is fine. Because then because you're referring to an individual, and likely someone that both of you know. You're not referring to a generalized, quote, black guy. So, like, that's just my thing. I think that if we are going to make any progress on this race issue, that the first thing we need to stop doing is treating it with any sort of importance. I'm not saying it doesn't need to be handled seriously as in regards to that there is a bias against black people in some instances. All I'm saying is that we need to stop casually referring to it as part of our culture, because we do have a race issue in this culture. We do have a problem with it. We are not nearly as far along as we like to tell ourselves and pretend. This is the little dirty secret of American culture. Especially like American liberals, I think, are really in denial of this. But the only way I personally think we're going to make progress forward is to treat it like we treat our hair color or our eye color. I don't go around saying my brunette friend this or my green-eyed friend that. Right? I think it's another thing we just got to quit on with this. The skin tone, treat it the same as we would any other sort of pigmentation issue in our culture, which is we generally don't give a fuck. Generally. Except for skin tone. For some reason, melanin is a problem. So, I don't know. It's, I wish we would just stop talking about it so that way we would sort of subconsciously make it not important. And then when it's not important, maybe we'll get a little closer to equality. Because if it doesn't really matter, that's I think I think talking to black people, that's what I think they're just going for. Is they just want it not to matter. They just want us to be neutral. Like, essentially, they want us white people to not care that they're black. Like, that would be the ideal situation. And so I think maybe doing that would get us a little closer to that. I want to read a nice little quote from a book I've been reading. The book is called The Three Body Problem and I'm going to fuck this up, by a Chinese author, I think is Xijin Liu. I have no idea if I said that right. Anyway, it's a book about like aliens and physics and stuff, and it's not depth in the physics. So if you're like, oh, I'm terrible at physics, there's hardly any of it. There is some of it, but it's just more for the story. You don't even need to have taken physics in high school or college. You'll be fine. But anyway, the book is essentially, I want to read this passage about it because I think it goes great with what we're dealing with as far as wokeism in culture right now in our country. So Just to set it up, the way it works in the story is the Chinese have made contact with an alien civilization on Alpha Centauri, and they have told them that they're going to come to Earth, and it takes like 450 years, right? 500 years or something. So in the book, there is, now that people, it's out, it's public knowledge that Earth has made contact with an alien civilization. So, and from it, uh, the group of, I don't want to say elites, but they're sort of like intellectuals. That's the best way to put it. Intellectuals have started to kind of, some of them have created these religions around that they sort of worship these people as greater beings. So I want to read this excerpt real quick because I think it applies beautifully and perfectly to the issue of wokeism that we have in our country right now. So let me take a drink of this coffee here while I get the book out. Let me I'm curious, man, how do you guys take your coffee? You know, I like my coffee like I like my women, black with cream. Oh, nah, just joking here. Sorry. All right. So here we go. Here's the excerpt I've been talking about. Alpha Centauri became Mount Olympus in space, the dwelling place of the gods, and so the Trisolaran religion, which really had nothing to do with religion on Trisolaris, was born. And here's the key. Unlike other human religions, they worship something that truly existed. Also, unlike other human religions, it was the Lord who was in crisis, and the duty of salvation fell on the shoulders of the believer. When I read that shit, that light went off in my head. This is the problem with wokeism. This is why liberal people of, let's say, equal class, income, and status, as compared to conservative white people who are a little like on some happy index or like some study they did, that conservatives are happier than liberals. And one of the theories is that because conservatives are generally more religious than liberals. And so this is where I sort of agree with maybe that the possibility of this is because it definitely seems like to me that the issue with wokeism is that, just like in the quote, right? It is on, there's the believers are shouldering the responsibility and burden of saving the greater entity. And in the case of American culture, right, you have these critical race theory and social justice warriors and other people. And on the conservative side, right, you have libertarians who feel like they need to save the fucking country from all these crazy liberals and restore things to the way it used to be. So it goes across to anyone on the political spectrum. But what I've noticed is that the people who believe this type of stuff, that maybe the reason why they're unhappy is because they don't have a religion, and they're in a religion of which, or it's that they have a religion. I said that wrong. They have a religion of which they are shouldering the burden of God. They are trying to save the culture or the government or the state from imminent doom, and that they're the ones who are responsible, and that they need to take action and do this stuff in order to save it. And I think that's why ultimately wokeism and all this shit is going to fail, because there's no relief behind it. It's sort of anti-evolution in a way, in that it's that the purpose of God, and as we developed it in, right, ancient humans probably developed it through shamanism, sort of the psychedelic experience, but that God took away your problems. You gave control up. You understood that the burden of trying to control things around you was futile, and that you just sort of gave it to God, and that there was some sort of relief in that. And so I see that then wokeism is exactly the opposite. You are responsible for everybody else. You're responsible for the country. If you don't save it, this place is fucked. And uh, I really think that's why there are so many unhappy, depressed people on fucking opioids. Well, they're on opioids because it makes its monetary sense in the government. Anyway, I'm not going to get into that shit. My point is that these people are unhappy because likely what they believe isn't resolving any, it's not relieving them of any issues. That sometimes the right resolution to an issue is to relieve someone of the pain. And so, I personally, my personal way of dealing with this is like I understand if you're a person who's like, well, I don't believe in any of this stupid religion shit. Like it's all clearly made up, and so I could understand why you might feel hopeless. And I felt that way for a long time. Um, and why I would encourage people who feel this way to explore shamanism. I highly recommend that you take a ridiculous amount, between 5 and 7 grams of, let's say, psilocybin mushrooms, or pack a bowl full of DMT and smoke it, or pack your mouth full of some salvia divinorum and just kind of suck in on the leaves there for a half hour. I would encourage you to sort of find something because in shamanism, what it's going to do is when you do these things, it's more than likely, I would guarantee almost 100% of the time, that it's going to reconnect you with something much greater than you. Me, I was raised Christian, and then I went hardcore atheist because I realized this was all stupid religion made up. And then I went into I personally explored some kind of combination of like shamanism, minimalism, and spiritualism. And when I took mushrooms and DMT for the first time, I remember when I took DMT the first time, I came back and I said, I am wrong about everything. And I wasn't talking about exclusively to the existence of God and higher beings and everything being connected. Like, there's an entire dimension and universe based on things that are very helpful to us. And I think that in many cases, religion doesn't even remotely come close to filling that void. Some people it does, but for me personally, it wasn't until I stepped off into the ledge and into a heavy dose that um, I understood how important faith was, and how it. I used to be an unhappy person too, because I kind of was in the whole wokeism thing in a way. Like, so I am enlightened. We have to save everybody. And then I actually became actually enlightened, and it was interesting. It was very interesting to realize that faith is almost required in the human existence, because it's just good for your mental health. It's part of you that we don't put much emphasis on in our culture. But so, long story short, I highly recommend you guys to form some sort of, do not be attached by things that are man-made. They are fleeting and they are shallow often. Instead, I just want to point out that, because when I believed it was like, oh, religion is man-made. Well, every single religion is man-made. It was all made by ancient people. And so what I just would encourage people to do is to make up one that works for you. They made it up. You made it up. You make up a religion that works for you. Make up something that you will believe. Whether you call it made up or not, it doesn't. You can think, oh well, I made this up from nothing, so it's not really true. Well, it's true to you. If it's real to you, it's real. It doesn't matter. You people, we don't understand. We can manifest things. We don't manifest things physically, as in the third dimensions with matter, but we manifest things with our minds. As far as, you can choose to be happy. People don't want to hear that, and in some cases, that might be a very oversimplistic explanation, but generally speaking, you can choose to be happy. You just need to cultivate a happy mindset. And that's much harder said than done. But what I'm saying is just make it up. Because religion is just sort of a pre-molded sense of belief. And if that works for you, then I absolutely support someone being any type of religious, including Scientology or Mormonism, any of that stuff. Mormons are great people. I have never met a shitty Mormon, personally. So as crazy as it may seem to some of us who believe in other types of Christianity, it still has a great value there to the people in its community. Because the important thing is, the reason why I'm saying this is because it's faith is what's important. Having faith in something that it is, there is something going on greater than you, more aware, more in tune than you. And if you can sort of give up your problems, whether that be to Jesus, Allah, Buddha, well, they don't really give it to Buddha, but you know what I mean. In Buddhism, it's the realization that everything is nothing. That's what causes relief, is that what I'm experiencing is actually not really there. Not there, but it's just not really material. It's not important. It doesn't need to be, dwelt on beyond acknowledgement. So, I would just encourage those who maybe believe in this wokeism, we have to save everybody. I would just simply ask you to find something that will help you let go. To just sort of let that whole, like that Bill Burr joke about how he let the Christian, our God the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, and just trails away. That you just let that, free the whatever, BLM, 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 and just let it just fade into the distance, because ultimately it's probably not serving you in a better way, and it's probably anti-evolutionary to what's good for you and what's necessary for you. The thing I've been tripping out on too with us, it's like a whole culture thing, right? Like turning on each other. But the thing I see I see now, it's crazy. I see this thing where men are being defined by both men and women, right? Which is crazy. Women don't know anything about men. I'm just going to say this right off the bat. When a woman says, like, regarding a type of male, right? An alpha male or a beta male, right? Or, which I think are now called simps or something. I'm not sure. But essentially, it's women are sitting there saying that they know what type of male that they like and all that, and that they know anything about men. I just want to come straight from the record. I don't know shit about women or being a woman, but I do know shit about being a man. And I know that women don't know shit about men. If they did, right, our divorce rate would be lower. And I'm not blaming women. I'm just saying y'all are responsible for about 80% of the divorces, at least the filing of divorces. And most of those, like, irreconcilable differences, they're not big deal. But my point is that women claim to know stuff about men when the reality is the statistics are bearing out you don't know shit about us, because we can't stay married. And we don't know, maybe it's not we don't know shit about you, but it's just that I think men are at a time where we just don't care as much about them. But anyway, I find this interesting, right? And so what I did a little research. It turns out there are actually about what I can confirm as like legitimate. There are 5 categories of men, right? You have alpha males, beta males, sigma males, gamma males, and omega males. Right, so I'm going to kind of briefly go over all this stuff, but I want you to point out the whole time while you're thinking. I want to just make this point from the beginning, is that what people don't talk about is, in order to have the structure that we do as far as men go, because we do organize ourselves into hierarchies and structures in that way. Now, you are in a male friend group, right? You are equals in the friend group. You all occupy sort of different roles in the friend group. And I'm not talking types of males like beta. I'm just saying, like, you have your joker, you have the grenade jumper, right? You got your kind of like your lead man, right? And you kind of have like your funny guy and your crazy guy, right? So everyone kind of has a role they play in your friend group. That's why that dynamic works. But within that friend group, even then, we are organized by our personality types, right? Alpha, beta, all this shit I'm talking about. But I want you to understand that when you think about this, or when I listen talk about this, is to sort of keep present in your mind that without these like other categories, right, the upper ones don't exist. that the upper ones need the other ones beneath them in order to have their place. And so it's not like this structure is organized rigidly. It's sort of organized cooperatively based on our personality types. So um, I find it so you have like your alphas, right, who are generally what we kind of think of as your egotistical, um, proving themselves, macho, chest pumping, sort of that. I don't want to say toxic masculinity because that's kind of stupid, but on that bold, challenging, that bravado type of masculinity. Right? You have your beta males who are sort of secondary. They're not as confident, or they don't. That's not their personality type, is to be as bold and to be as braggadocious and all that stuff. Then you have your sigma males. Well, this is the last three I learned. These are new to me. The sigma male is sort of he it's sort of like a parallel to an alpha, where but in a sense of like he doesn't need the social structure. He doesn't care. He doesn't put much value in it. He's kind of more you kind of see them as kind of loners. These people are it's hard to describe because I don't know as much, but they're kind of like they can be intimidating from a distance because they're sort of they have this like kind of quiet confidence that people don't know how to react to. And you have your gammas, which are kind of like they're kind of like lower level sigmas who think they're higher than they are, but they're not, and they still have these other personal issues, like they need to be um, they kind of need affirmation from the opposite sex, and they need more affirmation from other people, and it's sort of like I almost want to say it's like a posturing thing, where these people they are, I guess, to the parallel of a beta male, but they don't want to be that. So they're less accepting of sort of that personality, and so they kind of have a little bit more independence. But um, from what I could tell on this one too, it had to do with dating. That the in the article it said that women really aren't attracted to them. So it's I guess that's kind of the difference. Is like they lack that quiet confidence. It's sort of more of a they want something. Right, and your omegas are like, I guess like your lowest level type of guy. That they're not really attracted to women. They don't really have much status. They don't care. There's not, for whatever reason, they're just not um, desirable by women, and really to be around other men. They're kind of more. And the thing about omegas, I sort of that they pointed out was that these people have very little to no value themselves in the social structure, so they don't care about quote being on the bottom. That many of them have just either sort of accepted it or have sort of they didn't really care to begin with. It's kind of like the oh shit, what is it called? Incels. I learned about recently. People who are like kind of involuntarily celibate, like they just can't get laid. I guess it's sort of like you can sort of say like that. But I find it interesting that in the article and in a couple of videos I watched that there was an inclination to talk down about betas, gammas, and omegas because these people don't have much value as like to women, especially, or much attraction, or people don't really, they aren't as interested in these people. And so I find that interesting that we say this about, which is essentially a vast majority of males, right? It doesn't seem like many males are in the alpha category, and in the sigma category. It's what I do find interesting is that we talk down about the lower ones, but they're essentially the ones that prop up the other classes, right? Um, and the other people, they sort of need, like, even if you say like a sigma male, right? An alpha male needs someone to boss around and someone that will listen to them, right? And I guess one issue is in the article, sigma males, alpha males don't get along, and they kind of be they're like these employees of powerful people who are just kind of like, I'm gonna do it my way, and they don't really, they're not intimidated. And so what I find interesting though is that sigma males and alpha males need these other types of males because, right, as like a sigma male, when how do I say it? Well, so like at work, when I have an issue going on, that I'm not going to sort of follow the lead of my supervisor or my boss or whatever because of something, right? Like I need other people. There are other people around me who will also sort of do the things that I'm sort of not doing and kind of pick up the slack for me. That sort of allows me to have a little bit more resistance. And so I just find that interesting. We talk about these other groups that we don't ever look at, and like these people support what needs to get done, even though they may not really want to do it. You have the alphas who are, allegedly bossing everybody around, and then the sigmas who are kind of allegedly doing their own thing. I just sit down and I go, okay, well, here's all these great worker bees in this colony that are sort of getting done what the top people aren't actually going to do for themselves, right? Whether it's because they're not going to go along with it because they're more independent, or because it's their plan and they're not going to execute it like alphas. They're not going to grind out and do the bottom feeder hard work. That goes against their whole alpha instinct. So, all this to say that in today's podcast, I think it's most important to remember that people are individuals and that they are not they're not part of groups. They are not these pieces of a group. That grouping is stereotyping. We can pretend like it isn't. And when you group and you stereotype people, it doesn't help because it misrepresents a lot of people, right? These groups are not homogenous. That's like what I say, people of color. And it's like we group them all into one group as if, like, right, if you include all the colors, right, brown, yellow, and black, right, within each group, black people are not homogenous. I had this great conversation with my friend at work, and like we were talking about, like one thing that bothers the shit out of me is when white people say, point to the systemically racist law, point to the law that's racist. Well, that's true. There is no racist written law, but I can show you the studies which control for, convictions or sentencing, and where everything is the same except race. And I can show you that consistently black people are given a 50% higher sentence. So I can't show you the book. I can't show you the wording, but I can show you the reading between the lines of it. And I think that's what personally irks the shit out of me about some of the conservative white crowd is that they say, well, there's no loss, there's no problem. And it's like, no, read between the lines, motherfucker. Quit playing dumb, quit playing willfully ignorant, right? Stand the fuck up, take responsibility, and say, okay, you know what? There is a disparity in the outcome. And since the beginning that there is no actual racist law, but the outcome is different, there is a bias in between that makes up for that determines that. So read between the lines, motherfucker. Don't be willfully ignorant. And so when you so I had this conversation with my friend, and I asked him, like we were talking about, I asked him, like, are Nigerians black? Right? And he laughed and said, hell no, right? Just for people to think he's a black guy. Because the point is what I'm saying is to this, especially to people who believe that there is no racist law, and it's just every now and then you have someone acting, in bad faith of law or whatever. What I want to point out is that, like in the case of this, right, there's a cultural difference between black people and Nigerians or Africans in general, right? And so we may want to see them as black, but the reality is that they are not. Those are very different groups, and they have very different structures around them. They believe things differently. They approach things differently. They have just entirely different attitudes. So it is dangerous for us to start grouping everybody, especially in the sense of like what we need to be. It's individual. Individuals are responsible for their behavior. They're responsible for how we can perceive things. The problem is that if we choose to see things through the lens of race, and by grouping, or I shouldn't say through the lens of race, through the lens of grouping, you make two mistakes. You misrepresent people, and then you allow for imposters to roam freely, because people could easily pretend to be something that they are not if based on your group. Bill Burr makes a great joke about this It's like a roadmap for racists. A pure, true, actual racist, a bad motherfucker, could dance around his racist language because he's got a roadmap. So within this, if you're trying to have a genuine conversation about race relations, because this guy uses all the right words and doesn't use the wrong words, you have an imposter in the group who is maybe not has the best of intentions or doesn't have any interest in changing the dialogue. And so the only way to combat this is to just know people as individuals, to stop thinking stereotypically and group thinking. It's the same regressive shit as I started the podcast with the streets of racism. As it's the same thing. It's just because it's being worn by just because it's a different color coming from the different color mouth doesn't make it any less regressive. We need to treat people as unique as they are and not by the features that they inherit. This, which I thought was obvious, but it's something that I think we've forgotten, and which is why there is a massive divide between our connectivity, between our connections as people, and our lack of community amongst each other. But anyway, guys, I hope you had a great day. I really leaned into the fucking culture thing on this one, but it's crazy. We're coming here at the end of the year. I'm just watching all this and just, for some reason, it spoke to me today to get into the culture thing. I didn't even try hardly any good jokes, right? There was nothing. I was just serious. Maybe it's the cold, maybe not feeling well, but anyway, guys, I appreciate you hanging through the episode. Leave your comments in the thing below. I know it's kind of a touchy subject, but I really will look through. I'm interested to see what people think and what they say. And I hope you guys have a great holiday. Enjoy your weekends. Take care of yourselves. Love your families. And, try to shut ourselves to some of this stuff that doesn't make us happy, doesn't serve us. So have a good one, guys, and take care. Peace.